it's Katie, and I am so excited to be back here talking about Westeros again. I feel like it has been so long, so I am so excited. I recently got to go to San Diego Comic-Con and walk through the House of the Dragon experience. It was amazing. I got to sit on the throne and interview fans waiting for the experience, but it quickly came to my attention that there are a lot of people out there who know absolutely nothing about this series or any of the characters in House of the Dragon. And that's why I'm here, because I want to share with you guys everything you need to know before going into this first episode of House of the Dragon. And I promise I'm going to make it as simple as possible. So the first season of House of the Dragon is going to be 10 episodes, and they're roughly an hour long, give or take. The whole series is intended to be 5 seasons currently, but you never know. Either it could be a huge hit and we get a ton more seasons, or they're gonna stick with their initial 5-season intention, which who knows. Now here's a thing a lot of people don't know. House of the Dragon is set 200 years before the events of Game of Thrones. So 200 years before Daenerys Targaryen is when House of the Dragon is taking place. So I'm sorry, Jon Snow fans, but you're not going to be seeing any Moody Boy in this series. Well, there's actually going to be a lot of Moody Boys, but they're just not Jon Snow. The House of the Dragon series is based off of a book, and it is completed, written by George R. R. Martin, called Fire and Blood. It's basically an 800-page Targaryen history book, okay? So if you want to know everything about Targaryens, definitely pick up this book, give it a read. It's a beefy boy. But don't freak out, the series is not going to be covering 800 pages. House of the Dragon is taking place within a smaller window of time in this book, specifically called the Dance of the Dragons, also known as the Dying of the Dragons. And without giving away any spoilers, the Dance of the Dragons was basically a civil war between the Targaryens. And I won't go into that any further because I really don't want anyone who hasn't read the book to get spoiled on the series. Okay, so let's talk about characters that you need to know before going into the show. This is Rhaenyra Targaryen. But for the first episode, you really only have to worry about this one, because you will only be seeing her in the first episode. Now, as I'm sure you've seen in the trailers, we have a young Rhaenyra Targaryen, and we do have an older Rhaenyra Targaryen, which I'm really excited about. So roughly it's going to be a 20 to 25 year difference between the two ages, and a lot happens. But because they're not going to be covering that in the first episode of House of the Dragon, we're just going to be focusing on young Rhaenyra Targaryen. Rhaenyra is the firstborn child of King Viserys Targaryen I. She's also known to be one of the youngest dragon riders in Targaryen history, having mounted her dragon Syrax at the age of 7. So Rhaenyra's father did attempt to have another child, but unfortunately it didn't live, and it ended up being a male, or what would have been a male heir. He decides that Rhaenyra is going to be his heir, which, if you know the world of Westeros, that is a huge, controversial thing to have a female heir to the Iron Throne. So naturally, you're gonna have some people who vow that they agree and that Rhaenyra will be the heir, but then you're gonna have a lot of other people who are like, we do not like this. And speaking of controversies, this is Rhaenys Targaryen. She is the king's sister and technically should have been the heir to the Iron Throne before her brother, King Viserys, but at the time, King Jaehaerys put it to a vote and nobody wanted a woman sitting on the Iron Throne, so sadly, she was outvoted, and instead, her brother, King Viserys, became, well, the king, which is why in this trailer scene, she is basically telling Rhaenyra that no man is ever gonna let a woman sit on the throne, and she knows from experience. So this is Prince Daemon Targaryen, and I know a lot of people are super excited about this character because he is being played by Matt Smith. Now, Daemon Targaryen is the brother to King Viserys Targaryen and Princess Rhaenyra's uncle. Now, he's what you would probably call a bad boy, not the most moral of guys. He's one of those guys that you would find in a brothel and beating up some dudes on a Friday night. Now, Daemon's a bit of a grumpy boy because he keeps getting pushed down in the line of succession, which I guess is understandable, but at the same time, he probably would be a terrible ruler. So it's safe to say that he doesn't exactly agree with his brother, the king's decision to make Rhaenyra the heir, but that is something that could become a spoiler, so I will stop talking about it here. All right, let's talk about some other major players in House of the Dragon. I've already talked about Rhaenys Targaryen, but she is married to Lord Corlys Velaryon, also known as the Sea Snake. He is a part of an ancient house with a bloodline just as old as the Targaryens, and he is the most famed nautical adventurer in the history of Westeros. He's got more money than the Lannisters, he's got the largest navy in the world, and they have a long sworn allegiance to the Targaryens. So, the Velaryons fight from the sea, while the Targaryens fight from the skies. Corlys is a really amazing character, and a character that if you've read the books, you're really excited to see brought to the screen, and I think they're gonna do a really great job with him, so I'm really excited. This is Otto Hightower. He is currently Hand of the King. He currently thinks that the greatest threat to the throne is Daemon Targaryen, which makes sense since Daemon's a bit of a wild card. So they definitely butt heads a lot, but Otto Hightower is a very faithful and loyal hand to King Viserys. But let's talk about his daughter, Allicent Hightower. But we're only gonna be focusing on this one just for this first episode of House of the Dragon. Allicent Hightower is basically Princess Rhaenyra's best friend all through childhood. I don't want to get too spoilery for those of you who are just wanting to go into the show, not knowing a whole lot about the plot. And that's totally okay. I did tell you guys earlier that the show is about a civil war within the Targaryen family. And I will say that Alicent ends up becoming a huge factor in that civil war against Rhaenyra Targaryen. So you're gonna start off seeing them as best friends and hanging out together and being there for each other, but unfortunately end up becoming sworn enemies. I mean, as you could clearly see from the trailers. Now, this is Mysaria. She's a super cool character. She is Prince Daemon's mistress. Now, if you guys all thought Varys was the master of whispers, just wait until you get a load of Mysaria, because she is coined the mistress of whispers, and definitely not someone you want to mess with. So those are basically your biggest characters that you're gonna have to worry about going into this first episode of House of the Dragon. I know there's a lot of names. You can blame George R.R. Martin for that. He loves naming characters the same names as their ancestors, which is very realistic, but from a TV and book sense can be quite confusing to a lot of people. So when I say King Viserys the First, I'm not referring to Daenerys' brother, also named Viserys. Overall, the Dance of the Dragons is such a cool moment in Targaryen history. So however you feel about Game of Thrones, let it go, because this is an entirely different thing altogether. We have new showrunners, new producers, a new cast, and like I said, this is set 200 years before Daenerys Targaryen. So you don't even have to have seen Game of Thrones to watch House of the Dragon. But if you have seen Game of Thrones, there will be a lot of Easter eggs that you will notice, but it is not imperative to House of the Dragon to have seen Game of Thrones beforehand. So don't worry, you don't have to go rush out and binge all 6 seasons of Game of Thrones, okay? Hopefully that helped give you a little bit more information about these characters from House of the Dragon. I'm really, really excited about this series, you guys. I will say, I've seen the first episode. I cannot tell you what I think about it yet, other than I am so happy to be back in the world of Westeros. It feels like home for me. Game of Thrones was a huge part of my life, and the biggest thing that I was worried about with this show is that it wouldn't give me those same feels. And I will say, I got the feels. I got the feels. But be sure to subscribe, turn on those notifications, because I will be posting my House of the Dragon Episode 1 no spoiler review. And if you guys want any other videos about the Targaryen history, or maybe some spoilers about what happens to some of these characters, let me know in the comments below. And be sure to check out House of the Dragon on HBO and HBO Max on August 21st. So soon. I'm so excited. See you next time.